Good evening to all pious yogis. As you know, the Buddha said, this samsara is without discoverable beginning. First point is not decent of beings roaming and wandering on, hindered by ignorance, avidya, and fettered by craving, tanha. The Buddha said, there comes a time when the great ocean dries up and evaporates and no longer exists. But still I say, there's no making an end of suffering for those being roaming and wandering on, hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving. So ignorance is the root of evil. Ignorance is the root cause of suffering or samsara. So it's because of ignorance, one could not rightly understand the true natures of five aggregates of clinging, or in other words, nama rupa, or mental and physical phenomena. So it's because of this ignorance of the true natures of five aggregates, then wrong view arising, or ditthi, or in other words, sakaditthi, attaditthi arising. So it's because of ignorance, the foolish worldling regards the form as self, or the feeling as self, perception as self, or volition formation as self, or consciousness as self. So this is known as identity view or sakaditthi. So if one elaborates further, one will find in fact 20 identity view or 20 sakaditthi. Each aggregate consists of 4 identity view or sakaditthi. For example, one regards form as self, or self as possessing form, form as in self, or self as in form. Or sometimes the scriptures explains this ditthi in terms of 3 grips or 3 kinds of obsessions. So these 3 grips is the grip of craving. This is mine, etam mama. So in other words, the rulings regards form as this is mine, or etam mama is actually due to the grip of craving. The rulings or regards form as this I am, or esoham asmi, this due to grip of conceit. Then the rulings regards form as this is myself, or eso me atta, or this is due to the grip of views. So in the words, due to ignorance, craving, one holding to this notion of view tightly. So the commentary explains with a simile, the simile of the dog. The foolish worldling or the uninstructed worldling is like the dog. His view is like the leash, and his personal identity, sakaditthi, is like the post. So like the dogs running around the post, is the worldlings running around his personal identity and bound to it by craving and views. Just like a dog tied up on a leash was bound to a post, so that dog walks close to the post, then it also stands close to the pose. When the dog sits down, it also sits down close to the pose. When it lies down, it also lies down close to the pose. So similarly, rolling will be roaming in the three realms of existence again. So similarly, the foolish rollings regards form as well as the other four aggregates as this is mine, or this I am, this myself. So due to this view, then the rollings walks close to those five aggregates of clinging. The rolling would stand close to the five aggregates of clinging, or sit down close to the five aggregates of clinging, or lie down also close to the five aggregates of clinging. So rolling will never feel tiring with these five aggregates. Even the rolling does feel tiring with these five aggregates, or feeling frustration with the changes of five aggregates. But that feeling will not last long. Very soon, the rollings will turn their attention away and seeking or looking for other delights. So in other words, the rollings will not want to face the truth or face the reality. Those who have some understanding of Dharma may doing merits in order to overcome some suffering. So that's why the Buddha said one should often reflect upon one's own mind. How should one reflect? For a long time, this mind has been defiled by lust, raga, hatred, dosa, and delusion, moha. Through the defilements of the mind, beings are defiled. With the cleansing of the mind, beings are purified. So it's because of this lust, hatred, delusions, then beings will perform all kinds of karma. So this karma, as you know, is defined as a cetana in the teaching. So if we speak from the conventional truth, this karma is just like the painter or the artist. So as you know, the artist or the painter, for example, using the dye and will create the figure of man or woman, complete with all the features on a canvas. So if the artist or the painter is not skillful and doesn't have much knowledge, then the figure produced by that painter could be ugly, deformed, or even disagreeable. But the figure produced by a painter who is skillful, endowed with knowledge, could be beautiful, handsome, and so on. So you are just like an artist or painter in your life. So whether you have a beautiful painting or ugly painting, depending on your mind or your cetana. So whatever being produced by the worlding is only the form, the feeling, perception, volitional formations, and consciousness. And it's because of ignorance, they will cling to these aggregates. They will cling to this form, or cling to this feeling, perception, volitional formation, and the consciousness. So that's why the view or deity arising, for example, this mind. So So if you want to be free from this view or ditthi, such as Sakkaditthi, Attaditthi, then you have to develop knowledge or understanding or wisdom. So as long as one has not yet developed knowledge or right understanding, then one will keep on running, revolving around them, or it means around these five aggregates. So in that way, one is not free from these five aggregates, or in other words, one is not free from birth or aging and death, or one is not free from sorrow or lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. In other words, in brief, one is not free from suffering. So we can say that Sakkaditthi is in fact the five aggregates of clinging. So as you know, the five aggregates of clinging is the truth of suffering. So if you wish to be free from suffering, then you should not regard the form as self, or should not regard the feeling as self, or would not regard any aggregates as self. Or in other words, one should not regard this self as this is mine, or this I am, or this myself. So if one didn't want to regard them as this is mine, this I am, this is myself, then one have to develop direct knowledge. So it's not possible by reading or by listening to the talk in order to overcome or to uproot this view, the identity view. So that's why we are mindful of our own five aggregates in order to gain direct knowledge or personal knowledge. So during the practice of mindfulness meditation, meditators have to turn their mindfulness or attention inwards. They should not turn their attention outwards. If meditators turn their mindfulness or attention outwards, for example, to the sound, to the noise, then they will not be able to gain direct knowledge. It's because there's no contact, or contact means potapa or passa, or with that external phenomenon. It's because there's a contact with the body, that's why one would experience it directly, personally. So it's because there's a passa or potapa, one is able to be mindful of it as it is. So in other words, the consciousness or the awareness will be arising or perceiving or becoming conscious of a phenomenon. So during the practice mindfulness meditation, meditators are always mindful of their own five aggregates, or in other words, the mind and body processes as they really occur. At the beginning of practice, the arising of awareness or the consciousness is not clear. So meditators have to put forth effort to sharpen the mindfulness. At the beginning of practice, physical phenomena such as movements, hot, hardness are very obvious. So these physical phenomena can be perceived clearly and easier than the mental phenomena and as well as the consciousness. Meditators have to develop precise mindfulness in order to perceive various processes of physical phenomena, such as the movements, hot, precisely. So the mindfulness or the attention of mind should not on the physical form, should not focus the awareness or attention of the mind on the physical form. For example, when there's a bending of the arm, so meditators perceive there's a movements. So the attention is not on the arm. In meditators, for example, are mindful of the movements of lifting, pushing, dropping during the walking meditation. If they focus the attention on the foot, then they could not perceive the movements so well. What should be focused on is the process of movements. So meditators have to put enough effort perceiving there's a process movements of lifting, pushing, dropping. Similarly, meditators realize there's a process of rising movements or the process of falling movements of the abdomen during sitting meditation. They need to put forth enough effort to perceive the movements well. They should not focus their attention on the abdomen, on the form of the abdomen. So in this meditation, meditators might be mindful of various process of movements quite frequently, especially during walking meditation and mindfulness of daily activities. Sometimes meditators could perceive the movements of a rising, falling constantly, so they should put enough effort to follow every process of rising, every process of falling movements precisely. Meditators should not exercise any control over the process of any phenomenon. For example, meditators should not control the process of lifting movements or the process of pushing movements during walking meditation, so that they could mindful and note the process movements precisely. If meditators exercise any kind of control over any process of phenomena, then they could not realize them as a natural process. Similarly, meditators should not exercise control over the process of mindfulness. But when the mindfulness is not well developed, then meditators might have to put effort to direct the mindfulness to the object, or for example, to the rising movements, or to the sitting postures and the touching point. So meditators have to guide the mindfulness, or directing the mindfulness inwards. If meditators did not put effort to guide the mindfulness, to turn the mindfulness or attention of the mind inwards, then the mind or the mindfulness could be wandering far away or to the external sense object and so on. So when meditators are mindful of the basic object, for example, rising movements or the falling movements during the sitting meditation, then suddenly the mind has gone to a stronger object or phenomenon. The meditators are mindful and note that phenomenon as soon as possible. But sometimes the mindfulness is weak. So the mindfulness will be distracted by less distinct object easily. For example, when meditators are mindful of a clear process of rising movements, then there's a little bit of sensation. For example, EG sensation arising is very weak sensation, but the mindfulness go there immediately. So in that case, meditators have to come back to the clearer process of the movements. In this way, we are guiding the mind or training the mindfulness, staying with the strongest body object or the strongest body sensation.
The question is, why the mind already go to the less outstanding. Yes, at that moment, what he should do is just only guide it back to the strongest one. Does he need to labeling that less outstanding, or just draw it back?
Just be aware the mind has gone to the less outstanding or less distinct object. Just be aware, then come back to mindful and note the strongest object again. If meditators have developed deep concentration, in other words, able to pay full attention or full awareness to one object at each moment, then the guidelines say that to mindful, the most distinct object is no longer applied at that time. So when the mindfulness is not yet well developed, and meditators are not able to pay full awareness or full attention to one object, so that's why they have to guide the mind, keep the mind with the strongest body object. So whenever meditators are mindful of any body object or body sensation, as soon as there's a mental state, further thinking arising, meditators should mindful and note that thinking as soon as possible. So meditators should not purposely stop the thinking or has the desire that I do not want the mind to think and so on. Thinking mind or any mental states is also an object or phenomenon of Vipassana meditation. The meditators could see clearly the process of any mental states, the process of consciousness well, then they would gain much experiences and knowledge. So what's been emphasized is mindfulness, not the noting mind. Noting mind means mentally say, rising, falling, pain, and so on. In other words, we should develop moment-to-moment mindfulness. But sometimes when meditators intend to develop moment-to-moment mindfulness, then they purposely make a quick noting, note an object, then quickly move on to note the next object, then quickly move on to note another object. So in that way, they just watching the noting mind, going here and there. But they may not be able to realize the true nature of the object or the process well precisely. So it's important to mindful or perceiving an object clearly or precisely, then make the mental noting. Only when meditators could develop the mindfulness constantly, continuously, and when there's deep concentration, then they will begin to gain experiences or knowledge. So what should be realized during mindfulness meditation is there's only formation arises, then the formation ceases. The word formation means conditioned phenomena, or sometimes we can say sankhara. It's because everything arising is being conditioned. Even the process mindfulness is arising dependent on the condition. In the words, is due to the arising of a phenomenon. And meditators need to see clearly the relationship between mental phenomenon and physical phenomenon. Then they only begins to realize the three common characteristics. They are anicca, dukkha, anatta. So if right at the beginning of practice, meditators put effort writing the mindfulness to realize anicca, dukkha, anatta without seeing the cause and effect between the mental phenomenon and physical phenomenon. They could not realize, for example, anicca well. Sometimes meditators could develop deep concentration quite quickly in a short time and able to see the phenomena in details, but they may not find it difficult to realize the true nature of the mindfulness or the awareness. So in that way, it's difficult to realize the true nature of consciousness or the awareness. In that way, meditators must still regard that awareness or consciousness as self or mind. So meditators have to perceive the process of arising of mindfulness or the awareness and its passing away. So that's why the concentration that's developed in mindfulness meditation is different from the concentration gained in the practice of samatha meditation. In the practice of samatha meditation, concentration meditators could only realize that there's a single process of the mind that has been concentrating on a single object meditation all the time. But in the practice of mindfulness meditation, there's no single process of mindfulness or awareness. So meditators need to know from the experience, from their personal experience during the meditation. In other words, sometimes they need to put effort to guide the mindfulness to the object. Sometimes they just merely follow their mind, or in other words, the mindfulness. And meditators also have to know from the practice that sometimes they need to make the mental noting, fundamentally say rising, falling. Sometimes it's not possible to make that mental noting and so on. So this view of self, sakkaditi, attaditi, is arising because of ignorance. In other words, one is ignorance of the true natures of the five aggregates of clinging, or nama-rupa. So meditators need to develop mindfulness constantly, continuously. Sometimes they need to put effort to develop momentary, moment-to-moment mindfulness constantly, continuously. But sometimes they do feel tension or tiring then they may practice general mindfulness with less mental noting and so on. So, as you know, most of you have experience in this meditation. First of all, you have to realize the specific characteristics or the individual characteristics of the mental and physical phenomena clearly. Then meditators have to realize the cause and effect between the process of the awareness and the phenomenon. So in other words, the mindfulness or awareness is arising dependent on an object or phenomenon. So it's because the mindfulness or awareness is arising dependent on an object or phenomenon. That's why meditators can't choose the object or phenomenon that he or she wants to mindful and know it. So when meditators are perceiving or knowing there's an object arising at that moment clearly, then they must take that object as an object of mindfulness. And then meditators, you begin to see the arising of intention to do something, or the intention arising before process movements clearly. So that intention is also a mental process which is arising naturally. Meditators need not have to create it or look for it or search for it. Meditators need not have to wait for 2-3 moments or 3-4 seconds for that mental state of intention to arise and so on. So only meditators could see the formation clearly, then only begins to see the 3 common characteristics. So meditators have to develop, we always emphasize active mindfulness or active concentration. So in other words, the beginning of the experience of Vipassana meditation is seeing formation. It means there's no self or there's no I or person except formations. If meditators could not see conditionality clearly, then they could not realize there are 3 common characteristics precisely clearly. Sometimes meditators did not see formation or conditionality clearly. So when they could not see formation or conditionality clearly, whenever something disappears, there could be a feeling of fear arising. Okay. For example, if meditators still have a strong attachment to the notion of a self, or when there's a strong attachment to the notion of self, for example, the form of the arm or certain part of the body disappear, then there could be some feeling of fear arising. Or when they could see the phenomena keep on passing away, there's a feeling of fear arising. It's because they have this attachment to the notion of the self or an I. But one who could realize cause and effect or interconditionality between the mentality and physicality, they only seeing formation arising and then passing away, or formation arises and then ceases. So in this discourse, the simile of the dog, actually this discourse also taught about karma. The Buddha, in one of the paragraphs, the Buddha said, I do not see any other order of living beings so diversified as those in the animal realm. So even those beings in the animal realms have been diversified the mind, yet the mind is even more diverse than those beings in the animal realms. So in other words, there are so many different types of animals or creatures in the animal realms. So this diversity reflects the diversity of the past karma. So this diversity of the past karma caused rebirth in this animal realm. And this diversity of karma in turn stems from the diversity of cetana or volition. So in other words, due to different cetana, beings take birth in different realms. Due to different cetana or volition, so that's why some beings, for example, some beings in the human realms are born healthy, or born deformed, born handsome, calmly, or ugly, and so on. So that's why the commentary explained that the karma, or just like the painter or the artist. Similarly, in this present life, you are the painter or the artist of your everyday life. During meditation, you are just like the painter or the artist. It means whether you are practicing well or not so well, it's still depending on your cetana or volition. So one needs to be patient, especially encountering or facing some hindrances or defilements that are arising during meditation. So you are the painter, so you are the artist, then you know what should be done in order to produce a beautiful painting. And eventually you have to overcome that defilements, in other words, clinging to the self. So in order to overcome the clinging to the self, one must overcome ignorance by the practice of mindfulness meditation. So only through the practice of mindfulness meditation, satipatthana meditation, one shall be able to develop wisdoms or insight knowledge. So I wish all meditators be patient or put forth enough effort to develop mindfulness constantly, so that you could see everything as a formation, and finally uprooting the ignorance and other defilements, and attain ultimate purity of mind.
สาธุ สาธุ สา